all over the world. And the goal of the project is to give away these computers and install servers at each school where content is distributed. Instead of developing their own formats, and instead of creating their own application to do this, they decided to create their infrastructure around OPDS, which means that whenever a kid need to download a book recommended by the teacher on the device, they simply use the same OPDS bookshelf between the school server and the devices. And even better, since this is not something that's centralized, these devices can actually create a global shelf together. It means that you don't even need to have a centralized server. If you have 10 kids using 10 PC XO together, they can create together a global shelf and share books that they like to read. A more common example for people using Sony readers or all these dedicated devices is Calibre to OPDS. Calibre is an application that enable people to manage and convert ebooks in all kinds of different formats. And with very little development, the developer actually created an interface to send files using OPDS, which means that instead of plugging in your devices to your computer and drag and dropping files one by one or hitting the sync button, you can do this wirelessly wherever you are, whenever you want. Even if you're not at home, it's okay. You can, if your computer is on, you can access your bookshelf. So this is a very important part. You don't need to have a centralized service for your bookshelf anymore with this kind of architecture. You can even have your own bookshelf on your computer and communicate to all your devices whenever you want. But there's actually a lot more that we can do with a bookshelf. A bookshelf is not just a place where we have metadata. It's not just a place where we store books. The natural extension of a bookshelf is to also store all the information that we create around books. That's why a bookshelf is an API. One example. Most services, okay, that's not good. Yeah, okay. Most services offer the ability to annotate and highlight words and sentences in books. And they usually sync these annotations and these highlights within their own ecosystem. This is interesting if you like to switch from one device to another. But there's actually much more we could do with this information if this was available not just within a dedicated service, but in an ecosystem where it's accessible. Take a look at this example. Currently, the only way that the Kindle uses highlights is to display popular highlights on their on a website that does nothing at all except displaying popular highlights. It means that we have probably millions of people creating very interesting information about these books, but this information is completely lost and cannot navigate and cannot be used widely on the web to enrich other services because the service for these annotation is proprietary and not accessible. And if you've highlighted something in this book and you're also using a social network, then once again, exactly like with your bookshelf, you need to enter the quote or the highlight or the annotation again when you want to use another service. It means that it's very cumbersome to use both services and to communicate information about what you found interesting during your book that you were reading. Another very good example is the position in the book. It works exactly the same way. You can sync your position in the book only within an ecosystem. And whenever I see this popping up on my screen on Goodreads, I know that there's no way I'm going to be entering the page that I'm currently reading and what I think about the page. This is just, it takes too much time, and it's just plain annoying. This should be automatic. And for me, the perfect example of how both annotations and highlights and position in the book should work is another service, not for books this time, it's Last.fm. Basically, whenever I listen to music on this service, whether it's on my computer, whether it's on my smartphone, any connected device, it's automatically synced, so I don't need to manually add this, and I get all sort of graphic representation of what I like most. I get so much more value out of it, and I have basically nothing to do. I'm not going to be talking about privacy issues, because obviously you have privacy issues about this, but from a user experience perspective, this is incredibly more powerful than manually adding this kind of information. And since these services already have this information, it's a real shame that there's no way we can use this, that there's no way we can automatically get this information and put it elsewhere. And basically, the idea is not just to create an ecosystem where we distribute and enable people to acquire publication. We can do actually much more around the idea of bookshelf. We can create a distributing reading experience around the idea of bookshelf. Bookshelves shouldn't be just about storing your books or having information about your books. Bookshelf can be a lot more. Bookshelf can store all these social interactions that we have. And it's completely possible to do this in a distributed way, which means that you're not limited to a single service, single app, single devices, but you can do whatever you want with this information. If you'd like to read more about OPDS, which is the technology behind this, I highly recommend maybe not reading the specification, but taking a look at the primer, which gives a good overview of what this is all about. Or you can also access, we have a Google group and a Google code where we can review what people have been doing for a year and a half on this technology. And that's it.